Welcome to Ian's Fish Room. Today, I'm going to be telling you about the best foods to feed your guppies. When choosing food for your guppies, you need to start with those ingredients. The ingredients you really want to pay attention to are going to be the first few ingredients that are listed on the package. Good fish foods will start with ingredients like krill, squid meal, black larva fly, earthworms, spirulina, algae meal, or whole fish meal. Those ingredients are all really high quality and are going to be really nutritious for your fish and easily digestible for them. There are also some ingredients that you want to avoid. The first one that you want to avoid is fish meal. Now you might be thinking, did you just say fish meal was a good ingredient? And the reality is I didn't. I said whole fish meal. And there's a big difference between whole fish meal and fish meal. Whole fish meal is when they catch fish that aren't good for human consumption because maybe they're too small or they're really bony fish. And what they do with those fish is they grind up the whole thing, bones and all, and make that into a meal. That's whole fish meal. This ingredient can be great for fish because it's usually full of calcium and protein and those omega-3s that fish really need. But when the ingredients say fish meal, that means that this fish has had the meat cut off for human consumption, and they've taken what was left over, like the guts and the bones and scales, and they ground all of that up into meal. This type of fish meal has much less nutritional value than the whole fish meal. The second ingredient that you want to work to really minimize in your fish foods is any type of gluten. You can't avoid this altogether, as it's often used as a binding agent for your fish foods. But you want to see those types of ingredients like terrestrial grains and legumes outside of those top 3 ingredients, because it means that it's a smaller percentage in your fish food. Now that we've covered the ingredients to look for in your fish food and which ingredients to avoid, let's get into what I actually feed my guppies. I love to feed my guppies Flake Foods. They're great for your full adult size guppies, and you can crush them up into really small pieces for the fry you might have in your tank as well. The second thing about Flake Foods that I really appreciate is that you can feed them up at the top of the water column and they're going to slowly float down, and so if there's guppies that are in that middle part of that tank, they're going to get some too, and then they're actually going to drop all the way to the bottom. And so if you have some of those small fry that are hiding down there at the bottom, they're going to get a chance to eat some of those flakes as well. I'll leave some links in the description below so that you guys can check out some foods that I think are really good for your fish and have some really great ingredients in them. Another food that I really like to feed my guppies is micro pellets. Now I feed these in my auto feeders because they're consistently the same size, and that works really well in my feeders to be able to consistently feed them. Micro pellets are going to have very similar nutritional value to your flake foods, and so they're going to be another great option for you guys, especially if you're trying to feed with some auto feeders, maybe when you go on vacation, or even maybe throughout the day when you're not at home because you're at work or school. The next food that I feed my guppies is freeze-dried food. One of the things that makes these so great is that they are typically whole foods like whole brine shrimp or tubifex worms. These type of foods provide great nutritional value for your fish, and they will absolutely love them. In my opinion, the only downside of freeze-dried foods is that they can be a bit expensive. And so if you are feeding freeze-dried foods, make sure you're feeding them alongside some of these other staple foods that we're talking about. The next food on my list of things that I like to feed my guppies is gel foods. Gel foods are ones you prepare in your home by mixing a prepared powder with hot water and then mixing it all together. These gel foods are mostly marketed for bottom feeders, but your guppies are going to go nuts for the ones that I'll list in the links below in the description. Another great option for food is frozen foods. You can get frozen foods at most of your local fish stores, and these are going to be excellent for your fish. I suggest feeding your guppies things like frozen Daphnia, frozen Cyclops, frozen baby brine shrimp with or without spirulina, frozen bloodworms. Frozen foods are another whole food, meaning there's no other ingredients that are added into that food. And in my opinion, frozen foods are the best thing that you can feed outside of live foods. Which brings us to the last type of food that I feed my guppies: live foods. There is nothing better than feeding your fish live foods. And although there's a number of live foods that you can feed your guppies, I'm going to recommend that you feed baby brine shrimp. Baby brine shrimp are an excellent source of nutrition for your guppies, and they're one of the easiest live foods to feed your fish. You aren't forced to try to keep them alive for a long time, and if you want to feed them, all you have to do is pull some eggs out of the fridge, throw them on, mix them in with some salt and some water, and you've got live food for your fish. It's great. If you guys have gotten any value out of this video, do us a favor, hit that like button. And if you want to see how we feed brine shrimp, go ahead and make sure you check out this video over here of the hatchery that we use for our brine shrimp. Thanks for watching.